we move on to the next research about the adoption of virtual simulation-based learning on healthcare student learning efficiency, a systemic review and meta-analysis from Mr. Jirat Phoonphon Jeerangkul.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jirat Phoonphon Jeerangkul, and I'm a second-year medical student from the KMITL. And today I'm going to present you about the adoption of virtual simulation-based learning on healthcare student learning efficiency, which is a systematic review and meta-analysis. So before we go to the research and through the details in the presentation, I would like to show you, I would like to show you about the background. So in the present day, as you know, there is a huge immersion of the virtual simulation, and it evolved into many industries. For example, business, engineering, science, and of course, in healthcare and education. So we would like to observe on the integration between virtual simulation and healthcare education. And in this case, we're focusing on the preclinical education. So the question is that, what is actually a virtual simulation? So it is a 3D dimensional interactive platform, such as Metaverse, which everyone might seems to be common with it, but it can also divide it into many categories, such as XR, AR, VR, and MR. And next, we would like to observe and assess on the learning efficiency. So our paper focusing on two categories, which is perceived benefit and academic performance. And this is the overall picture summary diagram for the thing that I've just said. So we're focusing on the two big circles, which is virtual simulation and metaverse. So with all of the background, we come to our research question, which is, could virtual simulation-based learning improve the outcome in preclinical medical education, with primary objective of the potential of the virtual simulation-based learning and secondary objective of the investigation on the potential of metaverse-based learning. So the method, we use the specific search term, as you can see on the screen, with two databases, which is PubMed and Scopus. And next, we do the systematic review by using the PRISMA guideline, and we use only the original article or randomized control trial written only in English and not published before 2012. So at first we got 196 papers, and after removing the 19 duplication and with all the exclusion criteria, we have only 15 left. Next, we use those 15 papers for the meta-analysis by using the meta-essential guideline, and we only have 8 data set left. And this is the summary table of the meta-analysis that the paper left only is the randomized control trial study, which have the two groups. First one is the control groups with a traditional learning style, and the next one is a virtual-based learning style. And all of them indicate the positive effect, as you can see in the red, compared to the control groups, both academically and mental effort. This is also the summary table. And now let's get to the meta-analysis, which this meta-analysis uses the data from the randomized control trial and use the meta-essential guidelines, like I said before. With 95 confidence interval, one can see that the effect size is extremely large, which means the magnitude of the difference is leaning toward the positive effect. But however, we can see that the lower limits of confidence interval past 0. So that means, unfortunately, this data is not statistically significant. And also, this data have a very high heterogeneity, which means there is a lot of data dispersion. And so that means we need to do the subgroup analysis. And this is the subgroup analysis. We divide it into two parts. First one is the metaverse part, and the second part is the virtual simulation. And unfortunately, both of them still have high heterogeneity, so we need to discuss that on the limitation of the paper. However, the metaverse part have a large effect size, and it also statistically significant. And also the combined effect size is also large, so that means it's more significant and leaning toward the positive effect. Still, like I said, we have insignificant values, and sometimes we also have the high heterogeneity. So we need to calculate about the publication and picking bias, so we do the bias analysis. As you can see, we have an asymmetric distribution of effect size, which is only leaning on the positive side. So we need to use the trim and fill method in order to adjust the data. And we can see that the combined effect size is actually closer to the 0. However, it still cannot use it significantly because there's still a high heterogeneity value. So the conclusion, there is a statistically positive effect on learning efficiency, and especially the metaverse-based learning. But still, it have a high heterogeneity, so that means it better as an assistive technology rather than a substitution. And also in the limitation part, first of all, we do not exactly define what is perceived mental effort, so we need more definition about that part. And also there is a limit of the amount of data, which means we don't have actually much numerical data because we only do in the preclinical part, and some of the interesting data of the clinical part has been excluded. And most importantly, the last one is that it has a high heterogeneity, so that means there's a lot of variety of data that causes by the external factors, such as subjects. We did not use the subgroup analysis with its subjects, and also learning environment and countries, maybe the part of the effect why there is so much variety in the data. So that means it leads to a further study suggestion. First of all, we would like to include the clinical part because there's a lot of study about metaverse in the clinical setting, and it's extremely important and interesting. And also, it needs to be more specific, and we need to be more specific in the criteria part and eliminate other external factors that might interfere the result. And we use the standardized indicator for each values. And contribution. Actually, this study is a suggestive study for many other research, such as original one, review, and even more meta-analysis. And we suggest that it also suggests the positive correlation between the virtual simulation learning and the preclinical education that should be studied more. And before I end my presentation, I would like to thank you to all my instructors that make this journey possible, and thank you very much.
May I hear a question from the judges, please?
Thank you very much for presenting such interesting topic. Could you give me just some example of the review paper, how they use the virtual reality to apply into the teaching learning?
So most of the review paper, they use the original learning as like a baseline because we still need the traditional learning. However, they're like including those VR, XR, or maybe metaverse-based learning by using the simulation. For example, you have an original lecture first, and then you go through the metaverse session, and then they assess them. So like I said before, they use as an assessive to rather than the substitution.
Do you have the example of the subject, like the lecture or anything?
Okay, yes. Actually, in the table, can you please like share the screen again? In the table. Oh, okay. Anyway, in the summary table, there's groups of students. They studying the neuroscience, anatomy, and they. The second one, they comparing the neuroanatomy academic performance between the usual original method. They're using VR. So that means they actually use the lecture learning first from the live person, and then they use the VR simulation of the human brain and the nerve and something like that. So that means they need to have the information or the knowledge first, and then they see the picture in order to understand more it clearly, something like that. Thank you for the question.
Is there any other more question, please? If there is no more question, well, thank you so much for the well-informed presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.